More on school funding. Tonight, Target 8 investigates what exactly are you paying for through a levy for a public school system. Some schools, like Columbia, are asking you for money to help bridge a gap from state funding cuts. KOMU 8's Michael Lindquist looked into what your money pays for and if your kids are getting a fair share.
Columbia Public Schools has an enrollment of about 18,000 students and has not been receiving the money it's been promised. I looked at documents from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education about how much support the districts get from the state and federal levels. I also wanted to know how much money they're not getting and what's being done about it, and the solution may affect your wallets. Columbia voters will face a levy increase on April 5th that would give Columbia Public Schools $14.6 million.
Everything is pointing down in terms of revenue for our district, which is why we're asking the local community for their investment.
The increase is 65 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. The levy would go toward maintaining operations and halting planned deficit spending, paying for utility costs, transportation and staff, and recruiting and retaining employees. Stiepelman says going to the community is the only option when state and federal funding isn't enough, which Stiepelman says is exactly what's happening here. According to the state's foundation formula, CPS should have enough funding for $6,808 for each student, but is only getting enough for $6,108 per student, leaving a $12.6 million gap district-wide.
If, in fact, we got $6,808 for every child that is in our public schools, we wouldn't be asking the community for any increase to the levy. When the state cuts taxes at the state level, they are essentially pushing it onto the local community to raise their own.
And don't expect much from the state or federal level either. Governor Jay Nixon proposed a $76 million increase in state education funding, but was cut back to only $16 million. And once the state distributes it to Missouri's 534 school districts, CPS would only get $31,000.
This is nothing new. I mean, this is a formula that was flawed from the beginning and has disadvantaged Columbia to some extremes.
Federal support in 2015 was 6.29%, down from 12.1% in 2011. Also on the April 5th ballot, a $30 million bond to build and maintain its facilities. It breaks down like this: $20 million for new construction, $8 million for building improvements, and $2 million for technology improvements. Cole County R5 in Eugene is also feeling the heat of underfunding. Its enrollment is much smaller at 615 students in 2015 compared to Columbia's at about 18,000. Over half of its revenue is generated locally at more than 55%, but the superintendent says it's difficult to ask a very small community for money.
It's very hard to go to them and say the district needs more money from you when they are basically using every dime they have to exist and survive and provide anything for their families.
And she says for districts that have a tough time getting extra money from taxpayers, that could cause a disparity in education. But when money does get low,
typically the very first thing that goes are raises to your employees and benefit packages to your employees.
During her 3 years as superintendent, she's never had to cut them, but she says she may have to consider doing that in the near future. Also in the future, a possible levy. But for now, the money in the reserves is keeping the issue from having consequences in the classroom. Now, in order to pass, the operating levy in Columbia needs a majority vote, and the bond needs at least a 57% approval. We're going to continue to investigate whether students are getting their fair share, so let us know if you have any ideas for us. Email target8@komu.com.